What is up, everybody? I am your host, Shane Mallory, joined by my co-host,
Ricky DaCosta.
Tell the folks what time it is.
Run it back.
Time to run it back. Episode number 31. Beautiful people, please like, comment, and subscribe. You know, if you ever want to get a notification on any of our videos, you can click one of that little bell icon right there, all right? That notifies you whenever one of our videos. We're dropping a lot of between reels and then obviously mid-caps. We have the whole show, but then obviously we'll have a couple of breakdown videos of each of the individual topics and obviously some of our funny reels that get the
We've
kids
been
laughing.
getting some love on YouTube.
For
right?
sure.
So shout out
For
to
sure.
our YouTube subscribers.
Yes. I'll be getting it back in there with them on the comments as well.
Hey, you got to slide in them comments, man. You know, like the fans want to hear from you, you know?
It's got to happen, yep. Well, it was just the growth came more recently, so I mean, we'll definitely.
So now you want to pay attention to it? Is that what you're saying?
I haven't forgotten.
So the people started to be like,
the
ding, the ding. You're like, all right, let me get in the comments. We're at 300.
I got so busy and invested on the Instagram comments. All of a sudden, you realize, oh, you got other platforms. He's got people to go and share.
Man.
Please
Stop being so selfish, man.
No, you're right. You're right. Got to get on more of the platforms. But again, please like, comment, and subscribe. We're looking for those 5-star reviews on all our major platforms. Another exciting show for you to hear today, so let's get right into it. First, we start off on a little bit of a somber note, though. Hearts go out to the family members and loved ones of one Vontae Davis, former NFL pro, two-time Pro Bowler, I believe. I think the most recent team he had played for was the Buffalo Bills before his retirement.
Some time with the Colts.
The Colts too as well. He passed away. He found out. I think we found the news. I found out about the news either late last week or early over the weekend. Yeah. You know, obviously he was a good NFL player, but by all accounts in different interviews, you know, I'm on the Pat McAfee show saying he was, you know, just a good dude overall. So it's always sad to see a player, you know, especially at his age, 35, is just too young for anyone to be, you know, to be going out. But I just want to say condolences to all of his family and loved ones. I mean, I can't imagine what they're going through right now.
Yeah, listen, it's, you know, really sad. You know, they're they're a football family, but at the same time, you know, they're a family in itself. You know, really sad for the Davis family right now. And, you know, listen, it just speaks to, you know, gone too soon in general, gone too soon in football.
Sure.
And, you know, just you know, we never know what life brings, you know, and for someone that was the life of the room, the locker room, you know, it's hard to see that happen. And it just, you know, makes you wonder why, you know, what was going on. For all indications, you know, there was no malice, there was no drugs or anything like that. So it was just, you know, something sudden and unsuspecting. So just really, really sad. And, you know, hopefully our heart goes out to their family.
Yeah, one thing I could say about this just in general is just always take the time to make sure your loved ones know that you love and appreciate them. You never know. None of us really ever know. I mean, so seize the day, obviously, try to cherish each and every moment, and never, something I always say, and this is something I recently at least started saying to myself once I got married, never go to bed angry, all right? Okay. Regardless of what happened during a day, make sure that you tell that person you love them and you kiss them, you know, like before you go to bed, because you don't know. You could be leaving the door. I know, I got a little sappy there, but you never know that you could be leaving the door and all of a sudden you don't get to see that person again.
Listen, I'll just say, you know, give your peoples their flowers while they're alive, right? You know what I mean? I think that's another way of saying what you're saying, and it's just like, you know, appreciate all that because having gratitude and appreciation while the person's there, so you build them up. You know, maybe that changes their day, their week, their year, and you know, who knows what that means for their life. Yeah.
So listen, hearts again and condolences to all the family members of Vontae Davis and his friends in the NFL as well. The next topic, though, that we're going to talk about is Rashee Rice. Okay, Rashee Rice, rookie wide receiver, just finished his first year with the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, he capped that year off with a Super Bowl run, lining himself up to kind of be like the future and the, you know, one of the number one, the premier target for this team, especially if Travis Kelce drops off. But is involved in a multiple car crash incident reported by the police, I believe in Dallas it was. I think this was over the weekend too as well. This is a major collision. Now, I haven't read all the story, but the big details I got was both of the cars that were involved, or two of the cars that were involved in the accident, were through.
Registered to him.
registered to him through, and I think at least one, if not two of them, were through like a rental company.
Yeah, he rented a Lambo, and
There
then
was a
he
Lambo and then
owned
a Corvette.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So all right. So you rented the Lambo and the Corvette. The reports are that these two cars were both, I guess, driving on a highway somewhere in Dallas.
Potentially racing, allegedly.
Yeah. Again, I think there's still more to be discovered on this whole thing, but led to a major multiple car crash, caused multiple injuries in Dallas on this Saturday. And according to the reports, Rice is cooperating with all the authorities at the same time, but it is being reported that he could have possibly been there and then, in fact, also fled the scene, even though he is, in fact, cooperating now. But we could go a lot of avenues with this, obviously, because there's still work to be done on the investigation as well. Tell me, what are your thoughts on this, though?
Listen, obviously, anyone that was, injured, in the accident, right? We hope they get well. At the end of the day, it doesn't seem to be that anyone, died, right? And so, but there are some injuries that occurred from it. You start to, add up some of the pieces, right? Nothing is definitive right now.
Yeah.
But, obviously, all the cars were leased or owned or in some form connected to Rashee. And then, his friends were involved. Were they racing? Were they, were they driving to a destination and then, all of a sudden got a little rowdy? Were they drinking and then, things escalated, right? We have no idea, right, when it comes to that. But what we do know potentially is that he left the scene.
A couple was injured too. There's at least one couple that's reported being injured right now. Yep.
And so was Rashee driving? Right? Was he a passenger? Because the law tremendously changes if he was driving versus being a passenger.
Sure.
So even though they were all registered to him, right, you have to really think about, was he operating the vehicle? And then was, his vehicle one of the direct cause of the car crash, right? And so these are the factors. He fled the scene, and fleeing the scene, right, then, he wasn't there when police initially came. Yeah. There was no sobriety test done. And so for all indications, right, that's not something we'll never know, right? And so it's just a tough situation. And then when you think about this happening to the Kansas City Chiefs, they had issues with Kareem Hunt, right? They had issues with Tyreek Hill.
Sure.
And now here they are having some potential issues with Rashee Rice. So
I will say they are a team and a franchise that seems somewhat built to deal with those extremely well. And Andy Reid has obviously gone through his fair share of issues, both personally, like within his own family, and in the past with the Philadelphia Eagles too as well. So if there's any organization set up for it, I think they are. But I'm sorry.
No, listen, you're absolutely right. Look, everyone deserves a second chance, right? And we're going to give him the opportunity to and the grace to figure out what happened and allow the process to go through.
Yeah.
On the bigger sport side of things, it's really tough, right? This is a couple times now in a decade the Kansas City Chiefs have had players involved in incidents, coaches, with vehicles, women, and things of that nature, and another party being harmed, and so that's just tough. And here they are going for a three-peat. Everyone is predicting that Rashee was going to emerge as the main number one target.
Yep.
Bring in a Hollywood Brown, right? And then bring in another rookie to be able to pair with him and grow together to rebuild that wide receiver room.
Sure.
Now you have to ask yourself, will he be available? Right? Can you rely on him? Right? Because long term, if he's making these decisions now on a rookie paycheck, what would he do if you gave him $20 million a year 4 years from now? And so I think Kansas City might, definitely go wide receiver in the draft. But, keep an eye out for them bringing a veteran wide receiver presence to bring, some leadership and some reliability to that room. Because, look, he just got out of college, won a Super Bowl, impact player, riding high, and here's
really got good the latter part of the season.
Agreed,
too.
And here's life bringing him back down to earth.
Sure.
And what's unfortunate is that not too long ago we had the Ruggs Henry Ruggs
Sure.
incident.
Yep.
And if players haven't learned from that, here we are a few years later now, and a quote unquote potential star wide receiver is in a multi-vehicle accident. And there are some questions around the intent of what was going on, whether they were racing or was it, just and drinking, or was it just written out of random, right? But was it just wrong place, wrong time?
Sure.
A couple bad decisions amongst several guys.
Yeah. So my path of thought goes a few different ways on this issue. I know there are a lot of people out there that will probably sit there and right away they'll probably think the most negative or worst thoughts possible when these athletes get involved in these types of situations where it's just, it's the athlete who's, a multimillionaire and he's famous and, the law doesn't apply to him. They get to do whatever they want. On the other token, I can also sit there and appreciate the mindset. Can you imagine, if you were 23, 24 years old with multi-million dollars, just all these things just right at your fingertips and you can kind of just go and do whatever you want. When you don't have the right people or enough people in your circle advising you properly, these are where things like you mentioned the Henry Ruggs situation coming up, okay? And it's not like this is the first, and this isn't even the worst one. I mean, the investigation is still coming out on all of this. I mean, it doesn't look great, obviously, that by the report, at least the latest report, that he might have, in fact, fled the scene. But in terms of the grand schemes, no one was severely hurt, at least by the accounts and witnesses. No one was killed, thank God. But I think this just goes to a larger thing with young professional athletes. And I'm not saying that this is fair or not, but it is just a reality. And especially if you're a quarterback, but it's really like any position now because we live in a cycle, 24/7 news cycle. Like the second something happens, you are going to get a reaction, whether it's on Twitter or X, I think it's called now, or whatever social media site, you are going to get responses and you are going to get them fast and you're going to get judgment from all different angles and walks of life. As a professional athlete, no, that's not me. I'm saying if you are a young and aspiring athlete or you're going to be a professional athlete, one, have good people in your corner because it's just, you don't need a bunch of yes men because a bunch of yes men are going to end up getting you in trouble earlier on into your career because they're just going to tell you everything you're doing is fine. Yeah. They're just there along for the ride. Sometimes you need people to tell you, no, that's a bad decision. Stop, think about this. So that's my first thing. Number two, whether this is fair or not, this is just the reality. You as a young professional athlete, Rashee Rice, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, name any prominent player from any team right now. You, as a young man, are not held to the normal standards of most 22 or 23-year-old men that are at your age. You're simply not, okay? You are going to be held to a much higher and different standard because you are the representative of a corporation that represents billions of dollars in the NFL at large, okay? In each of these organizations, you have large-scale owners who make a lot of money as well. They are investing their own money into you. So your expectations, whether it's right or wrong, I mean, at the end of the day, we all should more or less know right from wrong, right? Good and bad, don't do versus, the things you should at least try to do in your life. But when you make that much money, there is like an added elevated standard of pressure and just an expectation because I'm going to pay you this money. Then guess what? I expect you to not drive home from a club late, drunk or something like that. I expect you to not moto race in the off season. I expect you to not be drag racing on a highway in Dallas. So it's just.
I thought you were going to say motorboat.
Oh, it almost came out there for a second. But I think it's just something that a lot of these younger athletes, and especially in today's, like I just said, social media cycle, where everything just happens like that, and you just know good or bad news quickly. I just think a lot of these younger athletes need to realize at 24, you're basically expected to act like 34 right now.
Yeah,
it's just different.
But here's the problem, right? Like everything you said is correct, but it's easier said than done, right?
Sure.
What I mean by that is,
I know how I was at 24.
right? And you didn't have
I know,
millions.
I was at
right?
24,
So you
sure.
got to think, all right, you just won the Super Bowl. You get drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yes.
Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback.
You're the dude.
You're the man,
Yeah.
right? Multi-million-dollar contract. You win a Super Bowl. You got that playoff money. You got that Super Bowl money, right? And you're saying, well, I need guys around me that's not going to be a yes man. Well, I got to make sure I got my boys around. I got to make sure. All right, I just made an extra $1 million in these playoffs.
Sure.
Right. I could rent a Lambo for my boys. Right. Like there's 5 of us. Right. We're gonna go to the club. Right. Even if we're gonna make a good decision.
Sure.
To take a cab home, we gonna pull up in the Lambo. Right. In the Maybach. Right. But here's the thing, because
Pull up with somebody else driving.
But here's the thing. You talked about that pressure. The pressure is, listen, don't be a sellout. Remember where you came from.
Yeah.
Right?
No, there's definitely that element,
Remember
for
your
real.
loyal friends who was shooting with you in the gym. Right? At 12, at 14, when you ain't had game like that, right? Who was your boy that had your back? Right? These are the type of things. Then let alone you got to take care of your mama, you got to take care of your siblings, right? All these other factors. So a part of it is keeping up with the Joneses. A part of it is being loyal to your friends. But ultimately, to your point, you have to make good decisions, right? And but
have good people in your corner.
Accidents do happen.
They do.
And, for now, we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt, right? This might have been a legitimate, not an accident, but a misfortunate situation.
Yeah.
Until it comes out that he was actually street racing and so on and so forth. Because something that could have happened is that, all right, we all rent a Lambo. We're going to the club. Right, one person revs the engine, the next person revs the engine.
All of
a sudden,
we're like a show.
everybody's driving 90 miles an hour. Yeah. Are we drag racing? Right? Are we street racing? Or right, did we just make a dumb decision by driving too fast as a group? Sure. Right? We don't know this, right? And now this accident happened. He walks away from the accident. Now there's other ramifications.
Sure.
But ultimately, for some people in life, they got to touch the stove to know that it's hot, right? You could tell somebody.
I like that.
But for some people, they got to touch that stove. And when they get burned, then they make better decisions because they know it's hot. So for Rashee.
And better a blister than 3rd degree.
Listen, amen. So in this particular situation, Rashee, if it ends up working out in his favor.
And I hope it does,
right?
For the record. Because by all accounts and everything that I've seen, seems like a fine kid.
Exactly.
Really does.
So, but this might be the thing that set him straight to have an NFL career because he got burned early and he'll make good decisions moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, again, and I really liked everything you just said. I would just say to all these young athletes coming up, get good people in your corner and realize that even though maybe you're coming in at, the NBA or professional baseball, football, whatever it might be, you might be coming in at 23, but they're really expecting you to act like 33. I mean, they're just expecting you to act wise beyond your years.
And listen,
whether it's fair or not, it's just
I gotta look
reality.
up his age. I don't even know if he's 23.
Yeah, no,
I don't even know if
young.
he's 23.
He's young. He's
so
definitely on the younger side. So, I mean, I get it. These guys are still, in some ways, they still think and act like kids. But when you go into the professional world working for millionaires and billionaires, it's just things change. The expectations and
But also, too, right, the city matters. He's from Dallas. He went to college in Dallas, right? You got the Dallases of the world, right? That's not Kansas City. It's not New York City, right? All of a sudden, you can make good decisions in Kansas City.
Yes.
Right? But you in Dallas, you in New York, you in Miami, right? All of a sudden, it's a little bit more tempting to make a bad decision, right? And so that's something you got to think about.
It's funny that you talked about how this could possibly affect where the Chiefs go in the draft, because I actually said this, I want to say maybe a couple weeks ago, and then a mock draft just came out. And you know who they had the Chiefs taking at 32?
Unfortunately, I
say
do.
It. You know. Go ahead and say his name.
I don't want to say it.
I say it enough times. Lad McConkey, baby. Lad McConkey could very well be going in that first round. They have him going at 32 to the Chiefs right now.
I pray it's somebody else.
But you can't. Here's what I would say about a Lad McConkey draft pick for them. Kelsey can't play forever. He is getting older. They do need to prepare for life after him. They need a new type of guy to go work the middle of the field.
I'll give you this. He got the hands. Kansas City Chiefs need a big body receiver. Yeah. Okay? All right. They need Addison Mitchell. That's what they need, right? You could even get away with
Is that Jordan Addison and mixed with Addison? Who is Addison Mitchell?
the wide receiver out of Texas.
Adonai Mitchell.
Adonai.
You got all those other ones. A little Jordan, a little Addison Russell, Adonai Mitchell, and a Jordan.
I think I was watching Creed 3. I think that's what's going on.
We'll get there.
But no, Mitchell out of Texas, right? Like that, a big body, hands, 6'3", 215, like, could jump out of the gym. And or go for the speed and go get Xavier also out of Texas.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll see what they do, man. I mean, I with the way they run their offense on the Hollywood Brown signing, I wouldn't be shocked at all if they went to try to get another intermediate type player. But we'll see.
And to your point, listen again. McConklin, right?
McConkey,
right?
McConkey.
Lad, your boy.
Lad, my boy.
He got the hands, but I just.
Great route runner,
They
too.
already have small receivers in that system. Sky Moore. They don't need another Sky Moore, even if it's with better hands.
Sky Moore, is not. He hasn't really been that good. He's kind of been a letdown.
That's what I'm afraid of, right? So go get speed. Go get big body. Now, if you're going to go get Lad, make sure OBJ's on the team. That's how you could balance things out.
Okay. All right.
Fair?
We'll see.
Is that fair?
That's fair. And I guess he is looking for a new team. So, I mean, it's definitely a possibility. The team that I'm actually really interested to hear your perspective on / talk about, and we'll obviously cover them more as we get closer, but just the move that they made very recently. So the Jets signed Hassan Reddick from the Eagles, which kind of an interesting move because they let their younger pass rusher in Huff go to the Eagles, ironically, which, it does bring up some questions to me. But I guess what this kind of shows you is the Jets bring in two veteran-type tackles, okay? So they wanted to round out that offensive line, keep Aaron Rodgers protected this year. They bring in Mike Williams, the receiver, to complement. Who's the younger kid? I'm drawing a blank on.
Garrett Wilson.
Garrett Wilson, okay? So
I got that right.
That's there you go. So they bring in another weapon to complement him. The tackles, obviously, to fortify the offensive line. Bringing in Hassan Reddick now to a defense that has been good the last 2 years. The defense has not been their issue. But when I look at the Jets, I guess this is kind of like all or nothing as I look at all these moves right now. You kind of got to win within a year, 2 at the max that you're probably going to get.
This is what I expected the Dallas Cowboys to be doing. All right. So listen,
they can't.
It's fair. That's fair. But regarding the Jets, I think they learned from last year, right? And, they went all in, but they didn't fix what was needed.
True.
Right? They sort of capitulated to Aaron Rodgers. They got, his boy here and his coach there and all these types of things. But I think
they got old receivers.
They went out and fixed everything they needed. So they got offensive line help, right, on the left with Moses
and Tyron Smith. In theory, you should have fortified both sides.
Exactly. They went out, added pass rush help. They went out, got a big body wide receiver, right? So again, in the AFC, you got to get after the quarterback. Reddick is perfect with that. Now you also bring in championship experience.
Sure.
Right? And so he was hungry. He didn't get a lot of playing time. He also doesn't have to be the man. He's going to be the pass rush specialist, right? And so he might get 12, 15 sacks just because he's going to be fresh throughout the year. The Jets really rotate their defensive line. And so the Jets legitimately might have the number 1 defense out there. So if all of a sudden you pair that with if I'm not mistaken, the Jets were holding teams to around 17 points a game, plus or minus, right? If all of a sudden Aaron Rodgers can score 21 points a game, right, they legitimately might be 12-5, right? Without exaggeration. They should be at least 10-7.
Okay.
Right? They should be at least 10-7 because without Aaron Rodgers, they were 7-10.
I don't know if you make all these moves, though, just to go 10-7.
No, here's the thing. They got to win the division.
Yeah.
Right? Which I think they're set up. Buffalo took a step back.
They definitely did. Buffalo's lost some guys.
I think it's clear, and AFC East, Buffalo has the best quarterback in the division,
Correct.
right? We don't have to make that argument.
Correct.
But they fell back. Again, I'm going to keep bringing this up. There's some issues with Josh and, Diggs, or whether it's Diggs and the team. There's something there. That locker room isn't, there's not a lot of harmony going on right now, okay? So that's what my big worry is. But then the Patriots clearly going to be the worst team in the division, right? So now you're talking about the Dolphins, right? But the Dolphins, right, lost their defensive coordinator. They're going to take a step back. Their offense is still going to be elite, but will Tua stay healthy for another full season? I don't know if you can bet on that. So hypothetically, the division is wide open because will the Bills take a step back on offense, right? They're definitely going to take a step back on defense.
Yeah.
And then as all the worries that we have about the Jets is the same level of worry you should have about Tua. So if the Jets end up having the number one defense, top 5 defense,
and they played the Bills tough,
and I'll just say this: Aaron Rodgers plays all 17 games. I don't see how the Jets don't win 10 games.
So the way I look at the Jets right now is if everybody stays healthy. Everybody stays healthy on this team for the majority of the 17-game season. I would think they are at minimum a 10-win team. I'll say maybe even 11 wins. Okay. The issue,
and to that point, remember they're going to play a third place schedule.
Yeah, so they are going to play an easier schedule for sure. So they're set up. Things are definitely set up to break their way if the injury bug falls in line. The thing that I just can't, completely shake with this team is what I've watched for the better part of the last 20 years, where it's kind of just every year you kind of hear this from Jets fans. And this is no disrespect to our producer, who is a big Jets fan. Shout out to Shawnee. But you hear this every year. I'm actually in a group chat, a basketball chat with one of my friends. He's a hardcore Jets fan. Every year it's Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl. And I get it. There's one thing to be like that, but then in actuality, when I look at this team, a little bit of a question mark about the coaching. I've watched Robert Saleh over the last 2 years. Just some in-game situations sometimes where I don't know if I completely 100% trust him. I think he's an awesome defensive coach. I don't know if he's an overall great game manager coach, which is
I can't argue with that.
Which is what a head coach kind of goes to. So that's my one thing. The other thing is that and maybe this is just a little bit of the coach in me, but you can't have the inmates running the asylum for a successful team. Like the reason the Patriots were good for so long, the reason the Chiefs are so good right now, teams in general, there is a top-down hierarchical approach to how things run in order. And it feels like with the Jets, like Aaron Rodgers has been kind of dictating a lot of their moves and what they've been doing in free agency. Now, I will say this, bringing in the tackles on paper, that's like, those are big boy moves. Okay, those are like adult type decisions. That's actually showing me that you're shaping somewhere in the right way. But I'll tell you this, the draft is going to tell me everything, because while you did bring in 2 tackles, they are older and they both have a couple of injury concerns, okay? Tyron Smith has had back issues. It's forced him to miss a couple of games the last 2 to 3 seasons. Morgan Moses has had his fair share of injuries too as well. If they go and draft somebody like, say, a Brock Bowers, I'm not sure if I'm going to like that as much as them drafting another offensive lineman, if not a tackle, just going back that up. Just because if nothing else, the key to the New York Jets over the next 2 seasons is Aaron Rodgers' health. Well, what's more important to Aaron Rodgers' health? Having one more shiny weapon on the outside, or getting depth to the offensive line in case anything happens?
Well, listen, to that point, I think the key is if they could trade back. Right? Let's say they're at the 10th pick right now. If they could trade back
11, I think.
10,
10 or 11.
If they were to trade back to maybe 17 or 20, they're still able to pick up maybe the tackle like Mims, right? One of those tackles, or the tackle from Oregon State. Pick him up and then get a second-round pick. Remember, they do not have a second-round pick because of the Aaron Rodgers trade.
Yeah.
So they're able to do that and then fortify the offensive line, add depth, and then be able to get a receiver in the second round. Then that's a move that I would love more so than I definitely do not want them to get Brock Bowers. Yeah. First of all, Aaron Rodgers does not throw the ball to tight ends like that.
Conklin's not a bad tight end. Like I think he's more than certain. I think he's an above-average tight end.
Now, again, if Neighbors is there, if Roma Dunze is there, right? Like
sure.
If these,
that might be a little,
I would love it. And or you trade back, you can pick up Thomas out of LSU, big body, touchdown receiver to go with Garrett Wilson. Those are moves that I love, right, while picking up a tackle or the best guard to further solidify that offensive line. But they need a young receiver, and they need another offensive lineman to add that depth to prevent, if injury does occur, you have that depth, and that young guy can step in right away. Last thing I'll say is Robert Saleh is good at making you play with your left hand. Right? So he's going to eliminate your best weapon. So from a schematic standpoint, right, he's able to limit offenses in the AFC. So if they make the playoffs, they're one of those teams defensively you do not want to see.
I like
that. Because it's going to be a slugfest, because it's going to be a low-scoring game, and anything could happen.
I like that. But listen, that is all the time we have for segment number 1, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back to run it back on segment number 2. What is up, everybody? I am your host, Shane Mallory, joined by my co-host, of course, Mr. DaCosta. And this is segment 2 of Run It Back. Please, beautiful people, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't worry, I'm getting access to the sign-in on YouTube very soon. I'll be interacting with all you beautiful people in the comments, too.
Yeah, I mean, listen. Apparently, they've been coming for me, right?
Well.
You know, I
apparently we got Ricky
mispronounced
A.
a couple
over here.
Names and all that. You know, we got, Adani, Addison, right? Yeah, we got a couple names.
Some combination of
the
names.
same guys
I
sort of, messed up on, But listen, I hear the people out there. And, listen, we'll get it right. We'll clean it up.
You got to give the people what they want.
Exactly.
You got to give the people what they want.
Clean it up, I'll get the names right.
I hear you. So listen, like, comment, and subscribe.
But the information I say about their game, though, is 100% accurate.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see.
Just because you disagree,
we got to dig through
blinded,
some of the archives for
I mean?
that. Yeah. I think we do need to do at one point like a live debate and like poll the audience, like who won at the end.
Again,
I don't know if your confidence can handle that, but I mean,
listen, I'll say this again. Mitchell from Texas. All right? He's going to be one of the best receivers in this class. Mark my words.
Well, listen.
Period.
Hook 'em
Fantasy
horns.
football.
I'm a Texas guy, so I mean, I would love that if he turns out to be all right. Yeah, listen, let's get into some of these topics now in segment 2. Starting with Lady Hoopers. We are in the college Final Four now for the ladies. Now, just want to say here, I want to preface this, I'm an equal opportunist. I am not the biggest college basketball fan at large to begin with, okay? So it's not like I'm being sexist and it's just the women.
But you got a problem with women?
I have no problem with women at all. As in fact, I'm about to give one woman extremely high praise right now.
Only one?
Well,
what are we doing here?
The one main one. Remember earlier in the year, we talked about
and they were coming for me in the comments.
I know. I'm probably going to get some now, too. Sabrina Ionescu going up against Steph Curry in that three-point challenge. I mean, Caitlin Clark might be the next one going against a guy, and she might actually be beating him when she gets to the WNBA. But Caitlin Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes watched the tail end of that game and then got back this morning, watched a couple of highlights. I just wanted to, see her game, how LSU was guarding her. She got game, man. She got serious game, and it's so funny because it's like, I don't care whether you're once I'm watching the sport, I'm just comparing you to an athlete. I don't care if you're a girl, boy. When I watch your style, I'm comparing you. And I have to be honest, the way she was pulling up from multiple feet behind the three-point line last night, multiple times, a couple times almost from the logo, I couldn't help but say, oh my God, this is like female Steph Curry out here on a basketball court. You give her an inch and she is taking it. I mean, they set picks for her all night. And the one defender, it seemed like they tried to play her one-on-one a lot. The one defender would try to slide over that pick, would do a decent job. But even if so, they would have that little bit of space. She wouldn't even step up. She would just sit right from the range and then bang, hit the shot right in her face. Or if she got around the pick and beat her defender a little bit to the drive, she would beat him. The defender would overcompensate, come back. She would just take the step back, bang, hit a three again. She's awesome. Shout out to, obviously, to the defending champs, LSU, and their leader, Angel Reese. They played a heck of a game, had a heck of a season, too. It's so hard to come back and repeat 2 years in a row. Yeah. When you are the champ, you're the hunted, you get everyone's best shot. And they made it right back. They made it to the Elite Eight again. Yep. They just ran into a buzzsaw, and the best female basketball player in college right now, some might say, period, in the world. I'm not going to throw all that shade to the WA players. I think she's got to prove that she can go and play and do this at that level. But she's awesome. She is spectacular to watch. She is a true playmaker. And I think where you really see the value in her game, too, is Iowa is not exactly a powerhouse for basketball on the men's or the women's side. So it's kind of just like this girl who comes out of nowhere and is just an absolute stud, puts a program like the Iowa Hawkeyes on the map, and all of a sudden they're in Elite Four. They're in the Final Four. She's got 2 games left to go and be a national champion. So I think it's pretty cool. But give me your thoughts on this.
Yeah, look, listen. Caitlin Clark is just a baller, period, right? And so
she's got game, man.
I think she is the first true byproduct.
An NCAA all-time leading scorer, right? Both sides, period. Yep. Okay.
I think she's the first true byproduct of Steph Curry, right? You have like a Trey Young and things like that,
I agree.
Guys that can shoot from far. But in terms of replication of game,
yes,
right? How
I'm
quick
with you, man.
Her trigger is.
I'm so with
you.
Like that little bit of space. Yeah.
I think she is the first true replication of Steph Curry and his specific influence.
I agree.
And it is tremendously hard to guard. Even though I think LSU had a terrible game plan.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
I think logistically, from a basketball perspective, anyone but Caitlin Clark can beat me. Right? So what I mean by that is when she's on that screen, you blitz her. Right?
We were talking about this during the break.
And whoever, I would literally play 4 on 3, period.
Okay. I'm making somebody else beat
Let the other women beat
100%.
me. But Caitlin's not having 41 points and 12 assists. Unacceptable.
Yeah.
Right? So I think LSU had a terrible game plan. But all the credit goes to Caitlin, because if you really pay attention to that game last year versus LSU, she tried to beat LSU one-on-one, dropping 30, 40, 50 points. And that wasn't enough.
Sure.
In this game, she got her 35-plus points, but the 12 assists was the back-breaking moment. Yes. Right, because she kept her team
when you drop 40
engaged.
and you're playmaking.
Exactly. And then also from her 41, even though she was about 9 for 20 from 3, she drove, right, a lot, and got a lot of easy buckets. And I think that caught LSU slightly off guard. Yeah. I mean, listen, she can do everything, on the basketball court.
She's very talented.
But the thing is, and I actually wish Steph Curry would do this more, because I think his game is already nasty, but he could take it to another level whenever he doesn't have a shot, and that's driving to the basket, that's shooting the mid-range. They don't expect that from Steph, because they're expecting him to shoot the 3.
Sure.
When it comes to Caitlin, I think that's what I noticed in that game that she learned from the prior year, is that, I'm going to drive to the basket. I'm going to get my teammates involved, right? I'm going to get, if they go underneath the screen, I'm just pulling, right? Because they're going to step up on me. So when these little things happen, I think was the difference in the game. And like you said, LSU wanted it last year. They were hungry, right? They had a point to prove.
Yeah, I remember the whole "you can't see me" after the game. Yep.
Versus this year, right? You know what? They came in as the champs and they got punched in the mouth. Now, listen, don't get me wrong. It was a good game. They didn't get blown out or anything like that. Reese ended up injuring her ankle. But no excuses from that particular standpoint. I just think Caitlin was the difference maker because she got her team involved, right? Yeah. So, and again, I'm not saying she's Michael Jordan or nothing like that, but when you look at a young Michael Jordan, he just tried to score a lot of points.
Very true.
Right? When he started to win championships, right, he was executing the triangle, getting his teammates involved, right? And he was there to be clutch at the end, right? Between last year and this year, that difference in MJ is what I saw as a transition from her. Instead of scoring all the points, I'm going to score points, but I'm also going to get my teammates involved.
Yeah, and listen, I think I want to take the note, too, to just say, first of all, I mean, I think this is fantastic that the women's college side is getting so much notoriety.
I think that game had over 12 million viewers.
Is extremely popular. I mean, I had multiple friends texting me about the game. You hear every broadcast, like multiple podcasts are talking about the game, too, and how Caitlin Clark is really putting, like, she could be really helpful for women's basketball, both at the college and the WNBA level long term, because it's just at the end of the day, people like stars. Like, that's what people are attracted to. She is a star. This is the girl that you're hearing about. You're hearing her talk about in all basketball circles. The one thing that I have to say that we're kind of bring up, not to bring a negative to this conversation, just more like a shed light on the whole. Why do we have to make this a whole, like, Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark thing? Why can't we make it like it's a competitor versus a competitor? Angel Reese talked up a little trash last year. She had her moment. She won a national title. Caitlin Clark won it this year. The fans went out. All the bad mouthing, because again, I try to stay away from social media throughout my day, but I can't help it. Sometimes I go on there, I read posts and I read the comments. I just have to say to some of you grown men out there, hating on like college women, like, just be better, guys. Like, it's just, and again, I'm not saying it's like you can hate on college men, but you can't hate on college women. Hating on college athletes, just period, when you're like a grown adult, I just feel like we can all be a little bit better than that. Why can't we just appreciate them each for the competitors that they are? And it's not like Caitlin went back and like did anything like that. Caitlin won it and she decided to go about it her way. I don't think Angel Reese deserves any shade thrown at her too as well. I mean, the fact that she was able to make it back here after winning a national title last year, I think that still says wonders about her and the team. I saw one of her teammates actually after the game. They were in like a co-interview, and she was nothing but complimentary of Angel Reese, saying, you guys don't understand the person that she is. I mean, from my freshman to sophomore year, I grew so much as a player and a person, and that's because of her. So I just want to these are student athletes at the end of the day. They still are like kids in a lot of respects. So it's just have some respect before you go about like making certain comments about the athletes.
I think especially, jumping back to last year, right, and all that drama or whatever, I think from a basketball standpoint, when it comes to hoopers, none of them had a problem with it.
I like it.
Like, if you want to talk trash and you want to back it up, that's 100%.
Yeah.
So that was the thing. In that LSU game last year, Angel Reese and it was like, I bet. I want that smoke, right? And guess what? We about to win, and they did.
Yep.
Right? And so that's the only thing. If you talk trash,
it
right,
can come back, sure.
You gotta,
the fans were all giving her some of that when she left.
Same energy.
Yeah.
You got to keep the same energy if you talk trash, right?
It's fair.
And last year, she lost, right? And couldn't really talk trash. And so everyone was looking at LSU as bullies, right? Because they were giving her the smoke, right, that she was giving everybody else. And so there was this big uproar and a lot of underlining issues and so on and so forth. But this year, Caitlin came back, went into the gym, got better, right, and said, you know what? I don't got time for the trash because I want this chip. I want to win it all. You got what I want, right? So all of a sudden now, Caitlin and Iowa were the hungry dog, right? And ended up taking it from LSU. Last year, I think Iowa got a little caught up with the attention, with the trash talking, right? And forgot the objective, and that's winning the chip.
Sure.
Look at Joel Embiid right now. He's like, you know what? This MVP is nice, but I don't got the ring, right? So for Caitlin, she could go down as the greatest female basketball / college athlete ever, right? If she can win this year with Iowa, she put Iowa on the map.
Yep.
Right?
Women's basketball
has
too,
the
man.
records in men and women basketball. But she has to have a chip. Now, here's the thing. She's carrying that team. There's other great WNBA women that played in college that have multiple chips. So for her one might be equivalent to 2 or 3 from some other people because there's not a lot of WNBA talent on that Iowa team.
Sure.
There's Caitlin and everybody else.
Yes.
And so ultimately, I think the nation and a majority of people are rooting for her. And it's starting to smell and feel like a little Cinderella story, similar to what happened with Michigan, right? This past year in college football, they were knocking on the door, right? They finished the mission, right? Again, it was all business for them. I think this year with Iowa, it's all business.
I like that. So listen, we got the matchups here for the women's Final Four: Iowa versus UConn, NC State versus South Carolina. Who meets up in the championship and who wins it all?
Again, I think it's going to be Iowa, right? And
I do too.
South Carolina.
That's exactly my pick too as well.
And I think
Shawnee's talking about these South Carolina girls being very, very badasses on the court.
Yeah,
so.
listen, those women are the real deal.
Yeah.
And I think, again, what a Cinderella story if she takes down LSU, UConn, and South Carolina.
Yeah, 3 traditional or perennial women's powers. That'd be pretty cool.
Right?
I have Iowa taking it all too as well. Caitlin Clark just looks like a girl.
So at this point, I'm smelling the Cinderella story. They're already writing the movie. So you know what? Iowa's going to win it.
All right. So now we got to...
You agree?
I agree. I'm with you. I'm with you on Iowa. Now we got to go to the other side. We got to go to the men's, okay? And you've got 2 teams right now in the Final Four. The only tough part for you is they're playing each other. You got UConn versus Alabama. UConn's margin of victory right now, I think, has been insane. I think they've averaged like 10 points, 10-point-plus victories in every single NCAA tournament game so far. So while Bama has been a solid, tough team, they beat my Tar Heels. That was really upsetting to watch. I texted you right after it happened going, I can't even be mad, man. They deserve to win.
Yeah.
On the other side, I think the other game, though, is the more entertaining matchup. NC State versus Purdue. You got my boy Burns, a.k.a. Robert Tractor Trailer Jr., as I like to refer to him now, versus Purdue and their big man. Can I get a name check on him again? Edley? I know it's a battle of 2 big men. It's Burns versus Edley. And Edley's now like a 7-footer. I haven't watched him play a ton. Zach Edey. Okay. So Zach Edey, and then it's Brian. No, not Brian. It's DJ Burns. I'm sorry, DJ Burns. Brian Burns is the pass rusher the Giants just acquired. See, my mind just flying. The Burns, all right? So that game's entertaining, I think, because that game's more entertaining because you're going to basically get an old school kind of battle of the bigs matchup right here. You got the 7-footer who's been walking around just grabbing boards. No team's been able to stop him. And I said Purdue wasn't even going to make it this far. So I was wrong on that too as well. Shows you I'm not an expert on everything, America. But I did have NC State here in my Final Four, and they're here. I love this matchup, but give me your thoughts just on the Final Four at large.
Yeah, listen, I think this is, UConn is clearly the most dominant team, right? Again, their experience from the beginning is why I picked them. And they seem like they belong. They know they're here, and they know they're the best team.
Yeah.
They're playing that way. And even though they're the champion, they're so prepared that they're all about business.
Sure.
While they're not excited for the moment almost, right? They expect to be here. They expect to be in the Final Four. They expect to be in a championship game. They expect to be champions, right? So for them, they're literally just on the path that they expect to be on to complete the mission, and then they're going to celebrate, right? So I think Alabama is going to try to light it up, increase the pace, shoot a lot of threes, but I think ultimately UConn is going to do what they've always done.
They play great defense.
Win by double digits, slow down the ball, play a half-court game, and end up getting Alabama out of rhythm.
Yeah.
In terms of the other game, listen, I said it. I'm surprised. Purdue has been doing the thing.
They have.
Much respect to them. They had a terrible couple of years with, upsets. Now here they are in the Final Four, and so it's well-deserved. And at the end of the day, I think we all want to see it, right? UConn versus Purdue, right? 1 versus 1. And
maybe not all of us, but maybe a lot of us. Maybe not all of us.
Some of us that pick with animals, right? But no, I think majority of people is expecting that, and I think that might be the fairest matchup, right? But let's see what happens. I think it's a great
I'd
set
like
of
to
Final
see
Fours for
UConn
both
have
of
to
them.
deal with my boy Burns though if NC State makes it in. Do you ever watch? Wait, hold on. Did you ever watch old school wrestling back in the day?
Of course.
Okay,
Like
so
Stone Cold.
Okay,
Steve
but I'm talking
Austin.
like the WCW. Like, remember the NWO?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so there was the NWO, and then there was the NWO that split off, the Wolf Pack. Remember? Don't turn your back on the Wolf Pack. You might wind up in a body bag. Yeah.
And now he's rapping?
Yo, that was their song. And all I'm saying is, don't turn your back on this Wolf Pack. They have been surprising people this whole tournament. And I actually got to watch one of their games. Burns is a hard guard, man. He's
And listen,
so
let
big.
the
There's
record
just
show.
not big dudes
Let
to
the
match up
record
with
show.
him.
He's getting some NFL interest, right?
Yo,
that is an offensive tackle playing power forward.
Yo, there's
right?
a power forward right now that's really an offensive tackle, and right now there's nobody in college basketball that can stop him once he gets to the post.
No.
Now, maybe Purdue, I will say this matchup might not favor NC State because Purdue actually has a legitimate big man that might just be able to use the rule of verticality, get his arms up and be able to frustrate him. But I think that's going to be an interesting matchup. Listen, I got to go with my squad because I've rolled with them this far. I'm going NC State versus UConn in the final with NC State pulling off the upset. Yeah. I got to stick with the upset all the way. You know what I'm saying?
You're going to see it through.
So now we stay on the hardwood. We go to the pros. We're going to the NBA now. All right. We are going to kind of break down the playoff matchups as we see right now. Okay. And if there were any difference, like we could even play out the play-in scenarios. And then with that, let's see which matchups, are the most intriguing. So start off in the East. So we got Boston at 1. So Boston at 1, Milwaukee at 2, Cleveland at 3, the Knicks at 4, the Magic at 5, the Pacers at 6, the Heat at 7, and Philly at 8. The 9 is Chicago, and the 10 is Atlanta. Those are all pretty much set because if you look after that, Brooklyn's 29 and 47. They're not going to get into that seeding. So 1 through 10, that's basically it. It's just a matter of how the order breaks down. Maybe Atlanta or Chicago. It looks like Atlanta and Chicago are pretty much going to be stuck at 9 and 10. It's just a matter of who is where. So basically, if we start that off, you would have Miami playing Atlanta. I'll just say outright right there, Miami wins that, and I think they win it pretty comfortably. And then you would have Philly versus Chicago. With Embiid back, I'm going to take
No. It's the other way, right? So Miami, 7 plays 8, and then 9 plays 10.
You're right.
Right?
My bad.
So it'd be Miami versus Philly.
Which, you know why I said that? Because somebody actually proposed it doing the other way, and for some reason my mind just went that way.
No, because you want to give I like it the way it is, because you want to give it the benefit to the 7th, 8th seed.
But then they're playing each other first. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but then that's the thing, right? So like my point is like that.
I
that
get
team gets a home game.
I get what you're saying.
As well as they get the opportunity to play twice, right? Versus if you're the bottom seed and you win, you like there shouldn't be the opportunity where 10 and 9 could both win and then play each other.
I got you. It makes more sense. No, you're right. Somebody said it the other way because they were saying the 7th seed should play the 10, but I think the whole idea behind the play-in in general is just you ended up in the play-in. So, I mean, this is just kind of where you're at. But, okay, so now Miami then would play Philly. Interesting. With the healthy Embiid, I think Philly probably wins that game. If it's a one-game scenario, I like Philly in a one-game scenario.
In the current scenario, I think Miami would want what's it called?
You're saying they wouldn't mind losing to Philly?
They wouldn't mind losing to Philly because it would be Miami, Boston, and Boston does not want to see Miami.
So we'll basically just say this.
Even just from a psychological standpoint, they do not want to see Miami in the first round.
So Chicago and Atlanta will both say they're out. Yes. We're both agreeing that Philly and Miami will be the 7th and 8th seed. So do we agree then Philly ends up at the 7, Miami's at the 8?
I think so.
Wow. Okay.
I think so.
So you get Boston versus Miami in a first-round series. Who do you like?
I would ultimately, from a coaching experience, obviously you have to go to Miami.
Of course. Spo's the man.
Based on history, you have to go with Miami. As much as Boston has done, that is the one team they do not want to see out of sheer...
It's a familiarity thing, too. Like, they know how to play with Boston.
100%. And like I said, they're going to have the psychological edge.
Like
And
Boston
so,
has to go into that series and basically like dominate them quickly.
again, right? We gave the Jets coach, right, a lot of credit for making making other teams play with their left hand.
Yes.
Eric Spoelstra is the exact same way. Boston
Might
lives
be the
and
best
dies
coach in the
by
NBA.
the three.
Yeah.
He's going to take the three away. And now you have to beat Boston with twos. It's going to be a close game, and I could easily see Miami.
And Miami makes threes in the playoffs too.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I'll say. I know this whole nature of Miami, they can turn it on and, kind of turn it off, turn it on, and they are a playoff team. They've proven it over the last couple of seasons. I have to give Boston the edge here and give them the benefit of the doubt because you cannot have been this good all season long and just blown teams out.
I thought you believe in history, man.
I do.
It's repeating itself.
You know what? It's tough too because I felt like the case that you just made was great. Like I'm like, it's hard to even argue with that. The only reason I want to say it is just because I'm like, if you lose in the first round, it's just like, what was this season even for? And that move that you made in the offseason, it just makes everything look worse. Like, then what do you say ultimately is the problem with the organization? I have to believe Boston finds a way. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think this is a 6-game series, but I do think Boston pulls it out. I do.
Then what do you think is going to happen if it is the Bucks versus the 76ers?
I think the Bucks will win that, and the reason that I think that they'll win that is because Embiid is only going to have so much time to get healthy and acclimated for that playoff series. Giannis has actually given Embiid problems in the fast just because he moves a lot. He's a guy that can go and actually guard him. They have Brook Lopez too. So they have, I think the difference is just they have more to throw at Embiid than the 76ers do to throw at Giannis and Brook Lopez, not to mention the matchup of Damian Lillard too in Dame time.
Listen, I'm going with the 76ers.
You're going with the 76ers.
Whoa. With the 76ers.
You're going with two upsets.
Here's the thing. It would be a revenge game.
Sure.
It would be a revenge game because Doc Rivers was the 76ers coach, right? And ultimately that 76ers organization is trying to get that monkey off of their back. This is the weakest version of the Bucks that we would see. And if they have to have that first round heavyweight fight with the 76ers, of which Embiid will have his legs underneath him. If Tyrese Maxey is back, they've learned how to play without them. So incorporating them all together, I think that's a 7-game series. And I would obviously, I would love to see, Rivers and the Bucks pull it out, but I think it'd be such a revenge game. The 76ers would be more focused. And you have to look, and I forgot the stat, but with Embiid, the 76ers are the most offensively efficient team there is, right, in the league this year, right? I think if they're not one, they're two behind the Nuggets. So they're an elite team with Embiid, and he was projected to be the MVP before he got hurt. So if they can even replicate that form going into the playoffs, I think 76ers wins that matchup.
All righty, man. So
and,
two
and,
upsets
and
for
the
you.
Bucks are only 14-13 under Doc. They still
You
haven't
have the
figured it out.
1 and 2 seeds both going down in the first round.
If that's the matchup.
Okay. Here's where my upset actually comes in. Cleveland Cavaliers at 3 would match up against the 6 Indiana Pacers. I like the Indiana Pacers in this matchup. And the reason I like them is, one, I think that if he's on and he can figure out his shooting touch in time, I think Tyrese Halliburton is a matchup nightmare for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think he's a matchup nightmare for a lot of teams, but I just look at the addition of Pascal Siakam makes the Pacers that much more of a formidable, tough team up front. And it's another scorer that can go and attack the basket. They also just have like tough dudes. You know what this Pacers team actually kind of reminds me of? They remind me of the Pacers team that used to give the Bulls problems. Reggie Miller, the Davis boys, Rick Smits, and all them guys. You had just a bunch of different dudes that could kind of all just get dirty. They have a combined guys that can score, but then also go and do the dirty work. And they know how to win physical knockout brawl type games. Like that's why them and the Knicks have had some of the best games this year.
In that matchup, I'm taking the Cleveland Cavaliers.
You like Cavaliers?
Take the Cavaliers. If they're all healthy, if Mitchell and Garland are playing, with Evan Mobley, I'm taking the Cleveland Cavaliers in that matchup.
And the final one, as we go rapid fire here,
You already know.
Knicks versus
You already
Orlando.
know.
I mean, come on. You got two
New
Knicks
York, New
fans
York.
here. New York.
As long as we can get OG back, if we get between OG and Randall, if we can get one back without a doubt.
And I
we're winning
honestly
that
think
matchup.
they could probably get through a series like that without them. I think going forward, they mean a lot more for their playoff prospects. I think Orlando's good. Boncaro is a bad boy, don't get me wrong. And I hope I pronounced that name right. It's Boncaro or Bonchero. I'm not 100% sure.
I think you said it right the first time.
Okay. So Paolo Boncaro, bad dude, but that's still a young team. They haven't been in a playoff series in a couple of years. The Knicks are experienced, Thibodeau's experience. I'd like them to take that series, if not right. Probably an outright sweep. But that is all the time we have for segment number 2. But don't go anywhere. We'll be right back to run it back on segment number 3. What is up, everybody? I am your host, Shane Mallory, joined, of course, by my co-host, Mr. DaCosta. And this is segment 3, the final segment of Run It Back. But, beautiful people, please don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe. We're looking for those 5-star reviews on all our major platforms. You want those little notifications? Just click that bell, baby, and you'll get a notification anytime one of our videos drops. But we left off. We had finished the Eastern playoffs, okay? A little bit of an easier, more direct one to break down. Now we get into the West, which is wildly complicated because right now, 1, 2, and 3 are all still up for grabs right now. The teams are separated by a game in total. Yeah, exactly.
One game.
So it's extremely close. And then you drop off a little bit with the Clippers and the Mavericks. The Clips are 5 games back, so they're more or less kind of in their spot. Really, we just have to figure out kind of what's going to happen at 1, 2, and 3. And then we also have to figure out the 6 and the 7 could be a little bit in play, depending on what happens there between Phoenix and New Orleans. But as it stands right now.
And there's a massive matchup going on tonight. Dallas is playing the Warriors.
Yes,
right?
they are. That's the late game.
That is the late game.
That's the late game. That's a big game.
Huge game.
I'm going to have to stay up and watch that one, too, because that's got huge playoff implications, too, as well. Golden State, too. I mean, they are at that 10th seed right now, but I mean, nipping and biting at their heels is the Houston Rockets, who had just come off of, I believe, like a 12-game winning streak before they lost to Dallas the other night. So Golden State is really the team right now. I think like they have no room for error. Like they lose a couple, and I mean they could be in,
and they do have an easy schedule.
They do,
right? But
they do.
They gotta really win out to stay in it.
100%.
All the other teams, right? You look at the Lakers at 43 and 33. You look at Sacramento at 43 and 31. Phoenix at 44 and 31, as well as the Pelicans,
45 and 30.
at 45 and 30, and Dallas at 45 and 29. They're all right there.
I know, it's crazy.
They're all within 2 games. And
Dallas has been on a little bit of a hot
play.
streak lately,
They
too.
have, and they all have to play each other.
I know.
Right? So Dallas could really fortify their position, right, by beating the Warriors and, starting to, really make a run at that 4 seed now.
Absolutely. No, this is really crazy just because it's so hard to break it down. But let's try to break it down as if the seeds ended like this today.
Sure.
All right, so let's break it down like that. So OKC would be the 1. Denver would be the 2. Minnesota would be the 3. The Clippers would be the 4. Dallas would be the 5. New Orleans would be the 6, although I have a feeling they're not going to end up there. But Phoenix is going to be the 7, Sacramento the 8, and then the final 2 play-in teams, the Los Angeles Lakers at 9, the Golden State Warriors at 10. So starting with the play-in matchups, that would leave Phoenix versus Sacramento, and then LA versus Golden State for the first round of those games. You and I had this discussion either last week or a week before, and you had actually picked the Lakers. I picked Golden State. Since the Lakers have made this lineup change, playing Rui Hachimura in the starting lineup now, I've reversed my course on this. Now, that's not to
that's
say...
just a common theme with you,
listen,
let the record show.
Let me just say something. When you get
backpedaling a little bit,
smart people react to new information
or
data, as they might say.
All right,
there's new data. There's new data, so I've got to react. But here's what I'll say about that game. I think the Lakers present a very a very large matchup problem to the Warriors just
Agreed.
because of their size and their starting lineup. When you bring in Rui, it's just that much bigger now of a 3, 4, and 5 that they can send out there. That's not to say at the same time, Steph could go nuclear and just have one of those games and they could just go win a game. But I think if the two teams more or less play to their averages, their strengths, and how they both play basketball, I think the Lakers will be too much. AD has always been a bit of a problem for the Warriors. And the problem now with the Lakers inserting Rui is, okay, you have Draymond to throw at AD at times and LeBron at times. You have a Looney who can at least go and lean up against AD at times. They also have the young kid. It's actually, I believe, one of the Davis brothers from Indiana Pacers' son. It's Jackson something Davis. Okay. I'm forgetting his middle name. He's not bad too, but again, younger player. Now you're depending on him for more important, crucial playoff minutes. I just think the Lakers are going to present too much size and matchup problems to the Warriors. I like the Lakers in that play-in game. Definitely. If that's the scenario.
Definitely. I don't even have to add anything to that. I talked about it last week. I definitely think the Lakers are taking that matchup.
Yeah. So now the other one is Phoenix and Sacramento. Now, I'll tell you my thoughts on this based on their regular season matchups and just the overall talent and experience factor. I like Phoenix in this matchup.
Definitely.
They got two killers.
This is what they're playing for.
This is exactly what they played for. This is what they got. This is what they got all these guys together for.
Agreed.
I just can't see a one-game scenario where as good as Monk and who is the younger stud point guard? De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox and Monk. As good of a backcourt as they have been, I just don't see that talent overcoming Kevin Durant. Booker's been on a tear late too, and
the Kings have an interesting schedule, right? That's what I was just looking at. They play the Clippers, they play the Knicks in New York, they play Boston in Boston. Then they have the Nets, they play the Thunder in Thunder. And
that's a tough finish for them,
right? And they still have the Pelicans, they still have the Suns, and they end the season with the Blazers. So when you start to think about that,
so Sacramento could fall
so
back
there's
too.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games left. They can go 4-4. They go 4-4. I could see the Suns jumping up into that 6th seed. I think
I could see New Orleans.
I think Dallas is going to hold on. I think the
agree.
Suns are going to finish 6th. But as in this current
I think
matchup,
the top 5 is going to be more or less what it is.
Yeah. Now here's the thing: Dallas has a really easy schedule. They have the Warriors tonight. Then they have the Hawks right in Dallas. They have the Warriors again in Dallas. They have the Rockets in Dallas. Then they play the Hornets, the Heat, the Pistons, and at the end of the season, they have the Thunder. The Thunder might not be playing for anything at the end of the season. So I think Dallas, based on the schedule, is going to be solidified in that 4-5 seed. And I think Phoenix is going to move up just based on scheduling. And I think it's going to be a hell of a run. In a perfect world, I would like to see Phoenix, the Lakers, and the Warriors in it. So if the Phoenix can move up and it's a matchup between the Pelicans and the Lakers and Sacramento and the Warriors, I think that's what NBA fans want. So they both can
They don't
win.
want the possibility of the Lakers and Golden State possibly not making the playoffs, because that'd be crazy if you had a playoffs without LeBron James or Steph Curry.
Exactly.
That would be really crazy, and the league would not want that either. I honestly think, though, even though that would be disappointing, I still think it would be okay, because it's just there's so much talent in the league right now in the playoffs. Sets up some awesome scenarios.
But think about the matchup. What if it's the Oklahoma Thunder versus the Warriors, right? 1-8, and then the Nuggets versus the Lakers, 2-7. Minnesota 3 versus the Suns at 6, and then the 4-5 matchup is Clippers and Dallas. That might be the best possible scenario for the NBA. We're talking 7-game series, heavyweight matchup, and you got young versus old with the Thunder and the Warriors, right? Is this the new guard? Sure. It would be the Nuggets versus the Lakers, right? Guess what? They're healthy. It's the beginning, right? So remember, the Nuggets swept them last year, if I'm not mistaken, in the conference finals.
Yeah,
right. So they got revenge on their mind, and then Minnesota playing Phoenix. Right, that opening round matchup could be like Minnesota. If you're for real, take down Booker and Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
And then it's wide open to you.
Sure. Well, it's funny that you mentioned the possibility of Denver playing LA in a first round matchup because I thought this was a bit of an interesting take by Nick Wright, and I think it was last week. He said, if you were the Lakers and you know that you inevitably have to go through Denver anyway, wouldn't you rather go through them in the first round while LeBron is as fresh as he's possibly going to be in a playoff series? He's 39 years old. You know, LeBron going through two tough or kind of grind out series in the West and then having to play the Nuggets, probably not going to work. He's only been through two more grueling series beforehand, and you know that's going to be a longer series. Why not just get that matchup right away and strike while the iron's hot? Like, that's the freshest you're ever going to get LeBron. That's the freshest you're ever going to get the Lakers at large, a healthy AD and whatnot too. I'm not saying that they necessarily beat them, but maybe that opens up the door as the best pathway for them to possibly go and compete and maybe beat the Nuggets.
And listen, let's give Anthony Davis some credit, right? He played like 95% of his games this year.
Yeah, he's been awesome this
year.
He has been awesome.
You know, so all of a sudden, if he continues that, it's interesting to see what they could be. But I think best case scenario, the Lakers see the Nuggets in terms of that matchup.
Sure.
See them in the first round versus in the conference finals.
And listen, guys, we're doing this now too, obviously, because we want to cover it because there's some meaningful games still left. But we can always rehash and then go through it again once the actual seeds come out.
Absolutely.
Because the West is
we're 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
We're 2 weeks away, right?
We have
If
about
I'm not
8
mistaken,
games, I think, left in the season.
The last game is on the 14th.
Yeah.
Right? So we're 10
So we'll
days away.
definitely go through like an actual playoff preview once the seeds get finalized too as well. But if we're looking at it like that, so the first series on paper, wow. So we have to do this this is so weird for me to do without the Warriors or the Lakers in the playoffs, but we'll do it that way. OKC versus Sacramento in the first round. It's a tough one because there's two young teams, and technically the experience side is on Sacramento's. They've been to the playoffs at least more recently, the OKC, but I'm going to take that one. I think the experience is a minimal advantage.
No. I thought you said you thought the Lakers would win, right?
Oh, yes, you're right.
So
I'm sorry. So it would be the
Lakers.
Lakers. My bad.
So in the scenario that we just described,
You're right.
if we just go off of what's there, all right, Thunders versus the Lakers in round one.
Thunder versus the Lakers in round one. You are correct. Thank you. I'm going to take the Lakers there. And the reason I'm going to take the Lakers is, again, size and experience. While OKC has been extremely good during this regular season, they really have no size behind Chet Holmgren. I think AD will be able to match up with Chet Holmgren on the defensive side. I think he also presents problems to Chet Holmgren just from Chet's going to really have to play defense on that side. And I think it's going to leave the lane wide open for LeBron to go and do major work because they really don't have any big bodies to match up with him. And I think it will just force OKC to be in somewhat of a mismatch schematically defensively for a better part of the series. I like LA, and I would like that I'd like them in about 6 games in that series.
I think the Lakers in 5 in that particular matchup. That is the team the Lakers want to see in the first round.
I like it. So then we have Denver now pitting them against our scenario, said the Suns. Okay. So Denver versus the Suns. I'll let you go first.
I think that's a 7-game series, and I think it's really a toss-up because both teams are going to be turning it on. I'm going to give the Thunder the Nuggets the respect that they deserve. But I give the Suns a real puncher's chance in that matchup. They just took down the Nuggets the other night. And so I'm going to lean towards the Nuggets in that particular situation. But it would be a 7-game series.
Well, so like with pro sports, so much of it is about matchups. And I'm with you. I love Denver. But if there's one team in this bracket that presents the most matchup problems to them, I agree with you. I do think it's the Phoenix Suns. Their ability to be able to go small sometimes with Kevin Durant at the 5 really puts Denver in a predicament defensively because it forces Jokic away from the basket and it gets Denver into much more of kind of uncomfortable rotations to where they're going to have to be playing much more defense. Now, having said that, the difference to me is just which of the two teams has executed more consistently over the course of the regular season. And going back to last season, obviously, too, that's the Denver Nuggets. So I like the Denver Nuggets, but I'm with you. I would not be shocked at all if it went 7 games. I'm going to say Denver in 6, though.
And I would say the difference maker, whatever team's bench showed up in that matchup is going to be the deciding factor in that game.
Good call. And Denver's bench, while young, has improved a lot over the course of the season, too. So that now puts Minnesota
versus New Orleans.
Versus New Orleans, yes, at the 3-6 matchup. I would take Minnesota in this matchup. I think they are the better defensive team, and they think they've showed that for the course of this regular season. New Orleans has been nice. It's good to see Zion finally playing and being healthy. I don't like their front line defensively. I don't like their team overall, performance-wise, offensive or defensively. They're not great at any one thing. They've got Zion and like a couple of other athletes, but in terms of a pure basketball team, they leave some things to be desired. Minnesota is, I think they're the best defensive team in the league right now, and no one can stop Anthony Edwards right now, so I like Minnesota in that matchup.
I think this is the perfect matchup for Minnesota because the Pelicans cannot match up with Minnesota. What makes Zion so good is that he loves to play in the post, right? Quick movement. All of a sudden, if you have Gobert, if you have, Karl Anthony Towns, and their backup center, I think it's like Naz Reid.
Okay.
He's another big body that can really pose some problems for Zion. And so I think that is where they fall short, and not getting that points and rebounds from Zion would be the difference maker.
Naz Reid, you are correct.
And I would give that to Minnesota.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. They have the bodies to go match up and frustrate someone like a Zion, especially come the playoffs, because he can sit there and do all that high flying, but it becomes much more condensed down by the lane and rim area. So that's kind of what playoff basketball is about. And Minnesota, I think, is built well for the postseason. They got a lot of size. They're just good defensively in general, too. I love McDaniels. Finally, this might be the most exciting first-round matchup of the Western Conference. At 4 and 5, you would get the LA Clippers versus the Dallas Mavericks. Now, on paper, I would sit there and tell you that this is a great matchup for the Clippers because they have multiple wing defenders that can go and match up and guard somebody like a Luka. Here's the issue. Luka, for one, right now is playing out of his mind. The dude's like a man possessed. Looks like a dude who's really determined to get to the NBA Finals this year. But even if you're able to guard Luka and somewhat frustrate him, they got Kyrie who can just go and get buckets at any given time. Luka without Kyrie, I believe it was 2 years ago, pushed this series to like a 6 or 7 game series in the first round. With the Kyrie, with the additions they made on their front line too, with Gafford, and I think PJ Washington is the other guy. This team is playing hot right now. They're entering the playoffs on a nice streak. Luka looks like a man on a mission. I like Dallas to pull off the upset in this series and go beat the LA Clippers.
I don't even think it's going to be an upset. I think Dallas definitely wins, right? I think they win in 5 games. There's just,
5. Wow.
Gentleman's sweep. I think when it comes to the Clippers, we saw their potential, right? When they won, I think it was like
the health and
20,
consistency.
and they won 20 out of 24 games. Something of that nature. But ultimately, I think there's no true leader on that team. Kawhi is not a vocal leader. No. Paul George doesn't want to be it. You can't follow James Harden. Russell Westbrook is too old, no longer as athletic, and is just not his team. And so I think they're going to fall apart. I thought they were going to have the ability to turn it on. I don't think they have it left. I think, PG and Kawhi, they're playing for the bag. Kawhi just got his bag. PG's going to get his bag over the summer, and I think they're going to be happy. And I don't think for them it's about truly winning a chip. So versus Dallas, they're hungry. They want it. They look like they enjoy playing together. They play fast. And if one of them can slow down Luka, to your point, there's nobody to stop Kyrie.
Yeah, man. I think it's a great series on paper, but I like the way Dallas has looked, especially to end the season. And I have not liked how the Clippers have finished off this season. It's funny because middle of the season, they looked like they could have been the best team in the West, and it hasn't worked out or finished that way.
Yeah, you saw their apex, and I think that's just through coaching, right? But ultimately,
very well could
now
be.
Again, I'll say this: if James Harden shows up, right, and he ends up being the offensive focus, where he's dropping 25 and 12, then that might be the difference maker. Right, that they need, but defensively, I don't see it from them right now.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. I haven't liked the way the season has finished up for them, and I like that you brought up the James Harden point because again, he's kind of going into his James Harden thing just as the postseason comes near.
But if he wants that back, he's got to show up during the playoffs.
He does. He does. He absolutely does. All right. So let us know what you think about some of those playoffs or series picks, or how you think maybe the final seeds will break down. Give us some feedback in those comments. Now we go back to football. We're going to talk about two teams today, all right? As we're getting ready to our draft, free agency is pretty much wrapped up. So we start with the two teams that lost just before the Super Bowl on their respective sides. We have Baltimore Ravens and the Detroit Lions. So we're going to start off with the Baltimore Ravens. So Baltimore Ravens, key losses. Moses was one, the tackle. Okay, that was huge. They also lost
the linebacker.
Patrick Queen.
McQueen.
I think it's just Queen.
Right. Oh, Patrick Queen?
Yeah, Patrick Queen. I got him right here. Don't worry. I got you.
Right.
I got you. Kevin Zeitler is also another guy that left them. Yeah, so a few linemen. The big ones, The big ones were the linemen, starting tackle, a starting guard, and I'm trying to... Jadeveon Clowney. And then Queen. So if you're looking at the four primary, right? They lost two starting offensive linemen. They lost a starting edge rusher, and they lost a starting inside linebacker. They gained Derrick Henry.
Yep.
So obviously that was a nice pickup for them. Definitely makes their offense a little bit more potent. Where do you see the Ravens kind of going, or where do they kind of need to go to get over the hump maybe next year, beat the Chiefs?
Listen, I think they're going to take a step back, unfortunately, right?
They lost a lot of coaches, too.
There you go.
Yeah, they did lose a lot of coaches.
Right? Their defensive coordinator is now in Seattle. Their defensive backs coach is in Tennessee as the defensive coordinator.
Okay.
And the reason why I bring him up, he was on the Eagles staff when they went to the Super Bowl, and everyone thought, the players thought he should have gotten that defensive coordinator job. Didn't. Went to Baltimore. Baltimore had that tremendous secondary, and now he is the defensive coordinator in Tennessee. So that team is completely depleted. Now, granted, they still have Harbaugh, right? And they still have Monken as their offensive coordinator. But ultimately, I think
Odell either. Not that it's a huge loss.
Yeah,
but
Odell, right? To lost some veteran experience there. And so it's just interesting. They're going to be dangerous. They're going to be up there. But the reason why I think they're going to take a step back is that because, remember, the Cleveland Browns had the best defense in that division, and Deshaun
Watson will be back.
Is coming back.
Yes.
Right? Then Joe Burrow is coming back.
Yep.
Right?
Bengals
and the
should be
Steelers
healthy.
have gotten better. Right? So all of a sudden, the Steelers got better. The Bengals will have Joe Burrow coming back. They're automatically better. I think it's just going to be extremely more competitive. And then also remember this, right? When you make a deep playoff run, that's more extra games played.
Sure.
Right? So that means they're going to go into the season a little bit more beat up than everyone else versus the Steelers made the playoffs, but they lost in the first round. The Bengals didn't make the playoffs. They had all offseason to rest up, get healthy, and come back fresh. Right. And so now, granted, I have some concerns with the Bengals. T. Higgins is franchise tag. What's going to happen there? There might be some dissension. But I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden the Cleveland Browns continued what they were doing, right, with that defense and better quarterback play. So I think ultimately the Ravens step back because of continuity in the coaching staff that they've lost, right, as well as you lost Odell, right, veteran, experienced Super Bowl champion, and then you lost Jadeveon Clowney, right? You lost him, right, which he accounted for 10, 12 sacks that helped them be one of the best defenses in the league and led the league in total sacks. And so I start to look at some of these things and say, you know what? They're going to take a step back.
Interesting. So I like that you brought up the Clowney loss because, again, a team that did, lead the league in sacks last year, and I think he was actually their leading sack guy last year. So that's something that obviously they're going to go and look to replace. Now the question is, do they try and make a trade maybe before the draft to try and go and get, a premier type of pass rusher, or are they kind of looking that way during the draft itself? I liked all the points you said to break it down because I also believe football is a big regression to the mean sport. Sometimes when you're so good the year before and then when you have some of these major losses that they've had, you can't help but kind of just drop at least someone in your schedule. I still think the Ravens will be solid. If there's two teams that I think embody next man up philosophies, it's the Baltimore Ravens and it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's like no matter what they lose from the previous year, somehow you don't know how, but they're still going to be like competitive. They're not going to be as bad maybe as you think they are despite like a bunch of losses. Now, I will say the Ravens have had a lot of losses. The Derrick Henry move is really interesting to me. If they can fortify this offensive line, now they got to go replace at least 2 starters, I believe, in a guard and a tackle. So that's a lot. That's not nothing. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's not nothing. You also have to go and replace a pass rusher. I would say the offensive line is probably more important, just in considering you just sunk a bunch of money into Lamar Jackson. You just got a running back. You want to make the offense work. And the Ravens, I think if I were the Ravens right now, I'd be looking to see, is there any deal that I can make for a pass rusher right now, like possibly an older vet type guy that I could bring in to this system that could produce similar to what Clowney did last year, so it's not like a huge drop-off, and then focus on my offensive line in the draft.
Now, remember this. They got 10, 12, 15 touchdowns from Gus Edwards, right?
Yeah,
so I see Derrick Henry doing something like that on the Ravens, but they already had that. Right. So what have they added? Look, Zay Flowers will take a step up. He'll be better.
Sure.
But they have too much to replace. They're going to play a first
tight end will be back this year too, and healthy Andrews.
Exactly. So let's see what happens. I think Lamar Jackson is going to have to run more to carry the team. But there's going to be some challenges there.
No, for sure. Now, flipping to the other side, the Detroit Lions, man, they had a really busy offseason.
They did.
Free agency alone, some of their signings include Kevin Zeitler from the Ravens, DJ Reader, defensive tackle from the Bengals. Who else we got? Another guard, Graham Glasgow, Donovan Peoples-Jones, wide receiver, as if they needed another wide receiver on that team. Zonovan Knight, the running back who was on the Jets, I want to say last year. He's been a backup, but he got a couple. Right? Yeah, he's actually been in a couple games, shown some explosiveness. I mean, I guess it's more just a depth piece. Marcus Davenport, another defensive end, and then Amik Robertson, a cornerback, another offensive tackle, another cornerback in Khalil Dorsey. So 2 new cornerbacks they brought in. Well, that's interesting to me just because.
And I thought the Lions, didn't they pick up Davis from Tampa Bay in a trade?
They may have. Is he a safety?
I think he's a cornerback, right? Carlton Davis?
You might be right.
I think they picked him up in the trade, and that's one of the reasons why they didn't go after Snead.
Now that you're mentioning it, I think you're right, because I'm pretty sure I saw they had 3 new defensive back signings. But the big thing that I like about what the Lions did was think about their team. They were explosive as all hell on offense. They had one of the best offensive lines. Well, they brought in just another depth piece or another starter in Zeitler, so that just bolsters what was already a strength for you. But then they're addressing a weakness. Defense was definitely a weaker side of the ball for them. Outside of my man Chase Hutchinson, who's a stud, and the kid Jack Campbell, actually, who got drafted last year too, is going to be good as well. They needed work and help on defense. Their secondary is one of the worst secondaries in the league. So at least on paper,
they did trade for him.
Yeah. So at least on paper, you bring in 3 new secondary additions. Okay. You bring in a little bit of a nice defensive tackle piece plug in, maybe take some of the pressure off Hutchinson and help against the run game too as well. The Lions have been very active. They are acting like a team who making the necessary steps now to kind of fortify and make up for the losses that they had. That was the difference in them not making the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah, listen, I agree with. Yeah, I think they had a ton of great pickups, like the DJ Reed pickup. Interesting, right? Daniil Hunter was available in free agency.
Sure,
right.
Pair him up with Hutchinson.
Pair him up with Hutchinson, right? Hurt the division, get him away from the Vikings. He ended up going to the Texans, which I thought that was a great pickup, but I thought he was affordable, and that was another edge guy that could have really been dangerous. So I would look for them to maybe pick up a edge rusher in the draft. But to me, again,
I'd say edge rusher or corner.
Yeah, but you see, if that was the case, then I would have traded, in this case, a 3rd-round pick, and I would have gotten Snead from the Chiefs. I would have signed Hunter right? And so now there you go.
Maybe
two
both of
veteran
those contracts,
guys.
though, with all these young guys they have
No,
coming up.
sure,
But I hear
but
what you're
that's the
saying.
thing, right? Remember, if I'm not mistaken, Hunter only got 2 years of big money, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the opportunity to maybe work something out with him and have him on more of a short-term deal. And then how you balance out the cap, maybe you give Snead a longer-term deal, right? With a similar guarantee to be flexible with the cap. But again, like that's just, two things that I think would have put them over the top, but they've been tremendously good in the draft. So I'm interested to see where they go in the draft. I think it's going to be edge, but based on their experience, they really go after best available. And I think they're going to, whoever falls to them is who they're going to pick up.
And they're drafting later, too. So, I mean, again, that's the one nicer thing about when you draft later. Yes, you have needs, but then also sometimes just because other teams draft on need, some of the best players can just fall too later in the draft, and sometimes you just get a perfect fit for you.
And they've been focused on playmakers, right?
Yes.
So that's
They
a big
got 'em,
part,
man. They
right?
got 'em,
And
too.
Jamison Williams, hopefully he's going to enter the season fully healthy, no suspension, and now all of a sudden, with St. Brown, you pair them up. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, listen, I think it's two teams that are definitely going to still be in contendership next year. But that is all the time we have for this week's episode of Run It Back. I'm Shane Mallard with my co-host,
Ricky DeCosta.
and we'll see you next week when we
Run It Back.